So today is Saturday, April 2nd, uh, 2022. And today, what I'd like to do is, since we finished the Oxherding pictures last week, when we were working from Yamada Mumon Roshi's wonderful book, his talks on the Oxherding pictures, which he gave to new monks back in 1954. I'd like to read you, and the 10th Oxherding picture, Entering the Marketplace with Open Hands, is so profound. I'd like to read and comment a little bit on another version of this to get a bit of a different take. This is from the book, The Ox and His Herdsman. This is a Chinese Zen text with commentary and pointers by Master D.R. Otsu, and Japanese illustrations of the 15th century, translated this was translated back into English from the German by M.H. Trevor. So it went from Japanese to German and now to English. It's a lovely little book. I like it a lot. It's very traditional, and it has a very lovely artwork. This is the image for the 10th and final Oxherding picture. And there you see Hotei or Budai. We talked about him last time. We'll look at him again. So the verses that go with this. Entering the market with open hands. The brushwood gate is firmly closed, and even the wisest holy man cannot see him. He has buried his illuminated nature deep and allows himself to turn off the much-traveled tracks of the venerable sages of old. He sometimes enters the marketplace with a hollowed-out gourd or returns to his hut with a staff. He visits the drinking places and fish stalls as he pleases to awaken the drunkards there to themselves. The note says, to their original nature, and a hollowed-out gourd was sometimes used as a wine bottle. The poems. 1. With bare chest and feet, he enters the market. His face is smeared with earth, his head covered with ashes. A huge laugh streams over his cheeks. Without humbling himself to perform miracles or wonders, he suddenly makes the withered trees bloom. 2. In a friendly manner, this fellow comes from a foreign race. From time to time, his face clearly shows the traits of the horse or of the donkey. If he flashes the iron staff as quickly as the wind, amply and wide suddenly open doors and gates. 3. Straight into the face, the iron staff springs out of his sleeve. Sometimes he speaks Hunnish, sometimes Chinese, with a great laugh on his cheeks. If one understands how to meet one's own self and yet to remain unknown to the self, the gate to the palace will open wide. So now we will look at the commentary on entering the market with open hands. Whoever has brought the experience of truth to completion in himself or herself goes into the world to liberate others. He immerses, there's gender language out of probably this was in the 50s, so just bear with it. He immerses and concentrates himself in liberating. All Buddhas and masters have done this since ancient times. Out of the boundless compassion that springs forth, he throws himself into the dusty world, and with his great vow, of course, those are the 4 great vows for all. The many beings are numberless, I vow to free them all. Greed, hatred, and ignorance rise endlessly, I vow to abandon them all. Dharma gates are countless, I vow to wake to them all. Buddha's way is unattainable, I vow to embody it all. And with his great vow, turns his hand to liberating all worldly beings. Can his behavior be described as moral or religious? No, neither the one nor the other. Let's just pause here for a second. This can lead to some real misunderstandings and has done so. though the behavior of such a person is not bound by religion or ethics or morality, it is not separate from it. Our own nature is what's expressing itself, and our own nature is a life expressed as precepts. So Roshi Kapleau used to make the point very clearly: Zen is not above morality, nor morality below Zen. It's not like anything goes. That's not what emptiness means at all. And Eiken Roshi makes it very clear that Zen is a religion. However, it's not a dualistic or a theocratic religion. And that it's not a belief system so much as an experiential practice, which makes all the difference. So just to clarify that. His doing in the unhindered life of Zen, which flows in it, cannot be pressed into the framework of ethics or religion. No one can render the free play of his life intellectually comprehensible. It is beyond laws or rules. It is actually from this freely playing life that all moral laws and religious rules spring from in the first place. And that is the point, and an important one. It is from our own nature that all moral and religious laws or qualities spring. So this is not abandoned at all. He appears in the realm of the Buddha, the place of the devil, and in worldly passions and wisdom at will. He buries his illuminated nature. That is, you might not know that enlightened person is an enlightened person. It's not that they would do crude or foolish things so much as they might seem completely ordinary. There would be no signs, no giveaways of, oh, I'm an enlightened person. No, that would certainly not be a sign of really going understanding. So we have that famous episode of the monk who the birds would bring him food, flowers, drop them at his feet as he sat alone in Zazen up on the mountain. But when his enlightenment was really mature, the birds no longer came. There were no signs of anything whatsoever. Not even the birds could recognize his holiness. As Bodhidharma said in relation to the emperor's question about the highest teaching, the Buddha's highest teaching, vast emptiness, nothing to be called holy, no one there to be called holy. So entering the marketplace with helping hands goes right to the central point. He buries his illuminated nature and visits the wine shops and fish stalls to awaken the drunkards there to themselves. This is the self-immersing and self-concentrating in the play of the original self. If you remember your Lord of the Rings about Aragorn, the great ranger, who's the true king, the line was, not all who wander are lost. Though he goes into the fish stalls and the wine shops, doesn't mean he's attached to that stuff or needs it. Not all who wander are lost. In the Huajian, Volume 2, there is the story in the chapter about Buddhai. So now we go to the monk, Hotei. The priest Buddhai, that's, I guess, Chinese for it, from Fanghua province, called himself Qi. He had a supple body, small brow, and large stomach. His speech was unruly. He slept anywhere. On his staff, he always carried a large cloth bag in which he put his personal belongings and a wrapped-up cushion for sitting. He went begging through town or village. In March of the 3rd year of Chen Ming of the Liang dynasty, Buddhai was dying. He sat on a rock at Yulin Shi temple and sang the following paean, Maitreya, true, Maitreya. You are distributed in countless selves and conceal yourself in them. You always show yourself before people of the present day. Nevertheless, no one knows you. Having sung this, he quietly died. Later, he reappeared in Chichu province and went about with his cloth bag as before. People gladly drew his picture. Who Buddha was is shown in this quotation. According to legend, Maitreya is a future Buddha who will appear in the world when the future ends to liberate those who did not have the opportunity of hearing Shakyamuni's teachings. Some people therefore believe Maitreya will supplement Shakyamuni, but in the last resort, it is really the realization of that great vow to liberate all worldly beings now and in the future. Buddha was an embodiment of Maitreya who deliberately turned away from the beaten track of the old masters and liberated the people in town and village. His speech and conduct amazed everyone. When our heart wish to see clearly into our own original nature has been fulfilled, we must then proceed to liberate others. One comes into the world of difference, into the marketplace, with open hands. We might say with empty hands. And we each have to do our own, at our own level, do our best to embody this aspect of compassionate activity, springing forward not from sentiment, but from understanding that self and other are not ultimately true, and that everything around us is ourselves. We begin with some faith in this, but eventually this opens out into some real experience of it, and it does transform the way we interact with the world. It certainly doesn't make us supermen or superwomen, but it opens gates of deeper and deeper empathy, and sometimes more than that, complete identification. And our practice keeps opening little insights into this again and again, especially koan practice as we proceed along with it. Forward, the wicker gate is firmly closed. The awakened person guards his essential nature and lets no one enter, whether worldling or sage. There's nothing to enter if there's nothing outside. There's nothing to model oneself on, we might say. Linji said, if the Buddha appears as something outside yourself, strike that down. Let go of that. At this stage, the 10th Oxherding picture, this has been fully realized. There's nothing outside one's own self. What is this nature that right now sees colors with the eyes, hears sounds with the ears, digests food and turns it into muscle, is slowly fading breath by breath, both into life and into death? What is this nature? What are its limits? Sky and earth, the way of ascending and the way of descending, have disappeared. He does not revere saints and does not treasure his own spirit. Shakyamuni is showing the flower, the silence of Vimalakirti, Jiao Chu's drinking a cup of tea, or the sound of a single hand, all point to the place where the wicker gate is firmly closed. That is, where thoughts no longer bind us. We're not caught in the coming and going of guests. Thoughts are like guests. Instead, the wicker gate to our hut is closed. There's nothing entering. There's nothing leaving. There's full presence. This, our own nature, awake and present. This is what, at the 10th stage, one actually lives from, is what's said here. And to actually live from this, not just glimpse it or touch it, as we will in practice, ongoing practice, but to live from it. This place which no one else can enter is in all masters. Shutting the gate is in itself the same as opening the door and stretching forth a hand to lead others in at the same time. The last place after the way of ascending, that is going up and up and up, is also called the secret of all secrets, or wonder of all wonders. Here, where there is nothing, lies the inexhaustible source of poetry and of a quiet and profound humanity. Really, Zen is the way of the human being. It is not bound by the religious forms of Zen. Zen practice ultimately transcends itself. We enter the way of the genuine human being, the mature human being, the selfless human being, in touch with our own nature, the nature of all beings, and live and act from this. This is quite a lofty condition and quite an aspiration that Zen awakens in us and offers to us as our own potential again and again. Towards the end of our practice, we work on the precepts as koans, and in there is many points about this, but one of the most beautiful little verses has to do with everyone yearns to leave the eternal flux, not just to live in harmony, but to return and sit by the charcoal fire. That is to return to one's own hearth, to be truly home and at ease in this life, in the face of injustice, impermanence, all the challenges that we all know. And it doesn't mean to ignore them, but to be so present, to be truly home in the midst of all of it. And then to do something, what you can do about it with these empty, that is, unself-centered hands. To be in the marketplace of this life, responding to all the challenges with unself-consciousness, but complete presence. This is what is being presented. It's really quite moving. Here where there is nothing, even beyond ascending, there's nothing. This is not a negative nothing. Lies the inexhaustible source of poetry and of a quiet and profound humanity. Liberating others is discussed from the second sentence to the end of the foreword. He mixes with saints and worldlings, Buddhas and devils, right and wrong, good and bad. He appears here and there and disappears. All previous masters threw themselves into this doing for others after they had liberated themselves. There were and are differences between the various ways of liberating others. It may take a normal path according to the rules, or it may not. Buddhai, that's Hotei, Hotei's way was very unusual. It did not follow rules. He buried his enlightened nature in the life of a beggar monk, deliberately forsook respected conventions, behaved oddly. He appeared here and there in towns and villages. Since the remote past, there have been many such ruleless ways in the Zen sect: Manjushri, Vimalakirti, Hotei, Hanshan, Shido, to name but a few. If you remember, Wei Ke was Bodhidharma's main heir, and through Wei Ke comes the transmission that led through China and Japan to Zen in the West now. Later in life, he had the habit of hanging out on the street corners and entering the wine shops, and people at the time were quite confused. They would say to him, "You're a learned person, a man of nobility and culture. Why are you doing this?" He said, I'm doing this for the sake of my own soul. We might say for the sake of my own maturing as a human being. He was like Hotei, entering the marketplace with helping hands. Buddha's way sprang and flowed out of the ground of his heart. It would be ridiculous to want to imitate him. I don't think it'd be ridiculous to want to imitate him. However, I think it would be foolish to imitate him. I think it'd be very noble to want to imitate the real purpose of why he was doing these things, but to simply enter the wine shops and hang out on the street corners and things like that, the fish stalls and such, that would be foolish indeed. To imitate the behavior and not aspire to the understanding would be a grave mistake. We each have to find our own unique way to present who we really are in our own lives in ways that express ourselves. Basho, the great haiku poet I mentioned, I think last week, said or wrote, I do not seek to imitate the people of old. I seek what they sought. I seek what they sought. That wisdom and that compassion is our nature. It is open and potential and not hidden from each one of us, which means we can, to one degree or another, awake to it and live from it and continue to mature along that path. That is the foundation of our practice. The words he sometimes enters or returns speak of the unfettered freedom of his doing, which streams out of his great compassion. In other words, he's not entering the fish stalls and the wine shops just to entertain himself. This is all springing from totally selfless compassion to enter into the world wholly and totally. Again, it would be foolish to imitate this if we're not at that kind of level. And as Yamada Roshi said, he believes there's really no one or very few at that level anywhere on this earth. He said he himself felt he was not beyond the 6th or 7th Oxherding picture. And Yamada was a very terrific lay teacher who had a very deep initial realization. You can read about that in the 3 Pillars of Zen. So this is a very lofty standard. So let's be careful when we think of, oh, yeah, we should do things like that. Keep it in proportion and perspective, please. An old Zen saying tells us, once I went away, this is actually from Hekigan-roku. It's from the koan of Changsha's stroll or walk in the spring. And anyway, he said he's quoting this. An old Zen saying tells us, once I went away over the fragrant meadows, now I come home wandering through the falling leaves. Our translation of the Hekigan-roku puts it like this. I went out following the fragrant grasses. I returned following the falling flowers. It sums up a very complete life, very natural, very complete life. He immerses and concentrates himself in this play of liberating others. On the way, he is not distant from home. Far from home, he is not on the way. That's a quote from Lin Chi. In the realm of color, no color deludes him. In the realm of the voice, no voice deludes him. This is also from Lin Chi. And we actually work on an aspect of this in the introductory koans. The koan goes, if you try to see me through form, if one tries to see me through form or color, you're going the wrong way. You will not see the Tathagata. How will you meet the Tathagata? In the realm of color, no color deludes him. In the realm of the voice, no voice deludes him. What is the delusion that Linchi is speaking about? This manner of being is called the lotus in the fire, or the jewel in the mud. These are really pregnant metaphors that carry a great deal of information in a very small space, very few words. The lotus in the fire, the jewel in the mud. Very concentrated images about, well, not going to say what they're about. Just take them in. Master Linchi once gave the following talk about the free play of liberating others. And it goes like this. This person is not held by anything. He goes through the entire cosmos and moves free and unhindered in the three worlds. Those are the worlds of past, present, future, and also the worlds of form, desire, form, and formlessness. He cannot be driven around by anything in the world of the various beings. He enters the world of truth in an instant. If he meets the Buddha, he teaches the Buddha. If he meets the master, he teaches the master. If he meets an arhat, he instructs him. He meets a hungry ghost, he instructs the hungry ghost. Wandering in play, it says in Wu Men's comment on the initial koan of Mu, that is, does a dog have Buddha nature? With realization, you live real realization, not just a glimpse. And you live in a samadhi of innocent delight, whatever realm you're born in, whatever circumstance you face, that means, whatever you're dealing with. Doesn't mean, well, I'm not going to explain it more. Anyway, wandering in play, he teaches and liberates throughout the realm of the worldly, but he never turns away from the one. The pure light sends its rays through the cosmos, and in it all beings are one. Dear pupils, the brave person knows today that there is no anxiety in our original nature. Yeah. You might say that courage is our original nature, as is compassion, which is why Manjushri often is shown riding on a lion. Absolute courage is our actual nature when divested of all our self-centered concerns. It's also another concentrated image. Wisdom rides on a lion and carries a sword that cuts through all self-centered delusive thinking, and also carries the text of the Prajna Paramita, wisdom, perfect wisdom teachings, which arise as delusions are cut away. Wisdom is revealed to have always been there. Worldly passion is directly wisdom, and all worldly beings are without exception Buddha. The living and also those without life should become Buddha at one stroke. This vow, together with the three others, in other words, our great vows for all, 4 vows altogether, has its origin in the place where the wicker gate is firmly closed. That is, it arises out of our actual nature. It expresses our actual nature's desire to function in the world, liberating all beings, freeing our own selves from greed, anger, and ignorance, fully embodying the way. Our aspiration arises out of our own nature. It's not an add-on. The 4 vows are the fundamental characteristics of the Buddhist path and the heart of all Buddhas and masters. First poem. He mixes with the light and with the dust with an open and generous heart. What can one call him? An independent, open-hearted, and really human being? A fool? A saint? He is the holy fool. Ryokan's Dharma name was Daigu, means great fool. Great fool. He hides nothing. Master Hui Tong once went with the layman Huang Shanggu into the mountains, a fragrant smell suddenly reached them. Hui Tong asked, "Can you smell the perfume of the flowers?" When Wang Shonggu replied that he could, Hui Tong told him, "I have nothing to hide from you." Wang Shonggu was awakened with these words. "I have nothing to hide from you. Do you smell the fragrance of the flowers?" "Yes." "I have nothing to hide from you." His face is smeared with earth, his head covered with ashes. Thus he wanders around from morning till night in the town. In other words, like a fool in the dusty world. He freely throws himself into the painful heaving sea of timeless reincarnation and liberates those who are sunk in it. He shows the magnificence of the Buddha without building temples. Everything that his playful being takes in hand becomes true and shines in its original light. No one can get to the bottom of this play. A huge laugh streams over his cheeks. He's covered with ashes, his face smeared with earth. A teacher's job is to get down into the mud, not to stay up above the problems of life. To even open your mouth and start trying to teach, you know you're going to fail again and again. You pick yourself up and you wipe yourself off and you start again. And that's how it goes. Splashed with mud, covered with ashes. You're not pure and free and covered in roses whatsoever. You're splashed. You speak, you open your mouth and you try and you speak and you fail again and again. No one gets it. You try again and again. That's how it goes. It's when Nelson Foster Roshi wrote to someone when they were made a teacher in the Diamond Sangha. When they received transmission, he wrote and said, "Welcome to the slave ship. The work is impossible, the master merciless." And there you have it. Hotei, splashed with mud, covered with ashes. Miracles or wonders in the last stanza means as much as optical illusion or magic. There is neither magic, mystery, nor wonder in the real truth. Whoever thinks there is on the wrong track. Of course, there are all kinds of clever things in Zen, such as making Mount Fuji come out of a kettle, squeezing water out of glowing tongs, putting oneself into a wooden post, or changing two mountains round. These are parts of versions of introductory koans. That is nothing magical or wonderful. It's just everyday triviality. He suddenly makes the withered trees bloom. We again remember the vow. The many beings are numberless. I vow to free them all. This is the essential vow. The practice is never just for ourselves. The little smidgens of wisdom that we awake to, the little bits of lessening of self-centeredness we achieve, also flow out into the world, whether we know it or not, and create better opportunities for all beings, whether we know it or not. The first vow is the essence of our practice. The many beings are numberless. I vow to free them all. He makes ordinary worldly people become Buddha in a sudden flash. With reference to the training, it means leaping out of the great no into the great yes. The holy fool is in the inexhaustible play of original life. Here, the vividly living active being of the all-embracing origin is at play. At play is the highest state. Although there is no all-embracing origin. The vividly living active being of the all-embracing origin is at play, although there is no all-embracing origin. Second poem. This fellow in the poem is the priest Hotei. It could be Bodhidharma, however. Talks about a foreigner from another foreign place. Bodhidharma was very not Chinese. He was Southern Indian. And so it fits Bodhidharma quite well. He ignores religious rules and acts freely. He is neither worldly nor holy. Remember, Bodhidharma said, vast emptiness, nothing to be called holy. It doesn't flatten holiness out. Don't think it means, hey, there's nothing to be called holy. No holiness. I'll just do whatever I want. No. Nothing to be called holy, nothing to be limited by that term. What is a blade of grass? What is a star? What is a human being? He is neither worldly nor holy, dwelling neither in passions nor wisdom. He arrives among the people as a friend from this wonderful place, this no place, really. There's nothing at all. He comes from the place of nothing, non-difference, into the world of various differences. He comes from this place of non-difference into the world of endless difference. The 10,000 things step in and are realized as my own self. I'm gone. There's just, for the Buddha, there was just the morning star. This is not a big deal, and yet it is. It's ordinary, and yet it is a flipping of our world around to see accurately, as if for the first time. When a person enters it after going through nothing, it becomes a world of unending freedom and inexhaustible creativity. He lives an enlightened life without enlightenment. There's no clinging to I've got it whatsoever. That's all gone. That's all self-centered. And it's gone entirely. Of course, again, this is a very lofty condition to live from this. But it can be touched in one's practice and become the foundation for further work. But he's talking here, the Oxherding pictures are talking about living from this moment by moment all the time. His immeasurable freedom, it could be her immeasurable freedom, and unrestrictedness of action are mentioned in the second stanza. He visits one house and then another, now with the face of a horse, now with the face of a donkey. Yeah, sometimes wise, sometimes an ass, sometimes a horse, sometimes a donkey. That's life, isn't it? Roshi Kapleau used to say, we're always evolving and devolving according to causes and conditions. You don't stick. You don't stick. He sometimes appears as a worldling, sometimes as a Buddha, a saint, an idiot, a donkey. He smashes everything into fragments with one blow of his staff, and an empty world opens. Door and gate, the realms of Buddha and devil, nirvana and birth and death are shattered, and all becomes clear and transparent. The cool wind cleans the bright moon cleans the cool wind. This pure, cool wind permeates his general liberating throughout. The well, we have a koan or verse that goes, the well, the donkey looks at the well, and the well looks at the donkey. It's a mutual world. Quite a condition that is being described here. The kind of freedom that it's talking about has nothing to do with self-centered behavior, nothing like that whatsoever. is being talked about here. This is the freedom of wisdom and compassion, selfless wisdom and compassion in all circumstances of living. It's very, very lofty and very moving just to even hear about it, I believe. Third poem, each word he says is like an iron staff which springs out of his sleeve straight into the middle of the pupil's student's face. 100 blows or 100 direct hits. He never fails to cut the Gordian knot. The phrase straight into the face allows, however, another interpretation. If someone were to strike a Hotei in the face with his staff, the latter could easily and neatly parry the attack with words in either Hunnish or Chinese and bring the encounter to end with a great laugh. This may be a more suitable interpretation, but the choice is left to the reader. Sometimes he speaks Hunnish, sometimes Chinese, means that he sometimes says nothing and sometimes being. We have koans that have us explore this. Sometimes it's this. Sometimes it's not this. What's this getting at? How can all of these positions be true? Aren't they contradictory? We have to sort this out. It all depends on the situation. What is that unchanging truth that sometimes is this, sometimes not this? We have to be able to demonstrate that in koan practice. It makes it very interesting, really. Something settles as we go through these challenges. Deepens our understanding, not intellectual understanding. That's not, you don't get another better thought, but you do get an understanding out of this work. And it's the understanding, if not the experience, that persists. That's why it's transformative. He might teach that heart is Buddha, or again, not heart, not Buddha. In spite of that, what he says is always clear and unmistakable. The phrase with a great laugh on his cheeks contains something indescribable that cannot be put into words. But please, don't think that Zen means you should imitate this and go around laughing at everything. I mean, there are people who do things like that, and it's really quite silly and sad. That's not what this is getting at. Don't think, oh, by laughing at everything, you're being Zen-like. No. This phrase, a great laugh on his cheeks, contains something that cannot be put into words. Once the Buddha held up a flower. Mahakashapa alone broke into a smile. Even the devas, the gods, and the bodhisattvas and arhats, all the people are thrown for a loop. Mahakashapa's face cracked, broke, shattered into a smile. The Buddha very mysteriously sits on an altar, beautiful images of the Buddha Shakyamuni, with a half smile on his face. Why? Why this smile? The world is full of many tragic and terrible things, terribly sad things. Why this half smile? The third stanza echoes a saying of Master Lin Chi, to meet and to remain unknown to one another, to speak to each other and not to know the name. Yeah, not to limit it down into, oh, that's so-and-so. I know who they are. They're always like this. I guess I'll speak to them in this way. No. If you hold nothing in the mind, this person in front of you is a great mystery. You have no idea who or even what they are. Then you can speak fully and truly. However, that doesn't mean to ignore situational circumstances and sometimes knowing something about a person helps to speak most clearly to them. So again, please don't fall into one side or the other on this. The self mentioned in the stanza is neither man nor woman, layman nor monk. Indeed, what is the self? We have so many issues about gender and class in our culture these days. But what is the self? What is one's own self? That sees color with the eyes, hears sounds with the ears, digests a pancake and turns it into muscle and thought and bone. Isn't that mysterious? What is this self? Who am I? Who's hearing? When the pupil or worldly person knows how to meet this self and to remain unknown, him or herself, they will become one with it and will be entrusted with its inwardness. This is the time of uselessness, great uselessness. When they enter the time of uselessness, then the gate of the palace opens wide. They enter the house that is their own home. All yearn to leave the eternal flux, not just to dwell in harmony, but to return and sit by the charcoal fire, to truly come home, to find oneself in one's own house, in the midst of all that happens, to be at ease in that way, and to live from that in all the challenging and myriad circumstances of a life with only wisdom and compassion springing forth with a great laugh on your cheeks. But that doesn't mean laughing at things necessarily, but something, a kind of warmth that springs out into the circumstances of your life in dealing with things that could be so painful, and yet we retain a kind of warmth that allows for a spaciousness that makes possibilities we could not have imagined possible. There really is reason for that great laugh. Our lives are complex. There's great hope in the practice of Zen and in its language that points to something truly wonderful. So the conclusion, the nature of Zen does not lie in scholarship, philosophy, and Buddhist doctrine, not even in Zazen. In other words, Zen. It lies in one thing alone, namely seeing into Buddha nature, that is the nature of each person. It is possible for a courageous person to become Buddha in a single instant. With a firm will, we must and can suddenly leap into the place of Buddha, but we must not settle down even there. We must throw ourselves into the world of difference, in other words, into the ordinary world, with the great vow and great compassion to immerse ourselves in liberating others. Our essential concern, which was also that of all Buddhas, lies in the following 4 vows. Worldly beings are innumerable, we vow to liberate them all. Worldly passions are innumerable, we vow to cast them all off. The teachings of the truth are inexhaustible, we vow to learn them all. The way of the Buddha is incomparable, we vow to tread it to the end. These 4 vows consist, in short, in searching for wisdom above and liberating worldlings below. The fundamental vocation of a Zen Buddhist is always to climb upwards with the whip of these vows. I should now like to bring this commentary to an end with an old poem. It is rainy and misty on Mount Lushon. The torrent rises high and wide in the river Shiqiang. If one does not succeed in reaching here, one's regret will persist for all time. When one succeeds in reaching here and returns, the world is just as it is. It is rainy and misty on Mount Luchon. The torrent rises high and wide in the river Xijiang. So that concludes our little exploration of the Oxherding pictures. There are several very good versions out there and books on them. Unfortunately, the Yamada Mumon book, I think was listed last I saw it at Amazon for $800. The ridiculousness of online buying of used books can try the fortitude and patience of the most centered persons. However, I think that Trevor, the Ox and His Herdsman, is a beautiful little Hokusaido Press hardcover, and I think you can occasionally find copies at Amazon in very good condition for around $20 to $30. And I think it's a worthwhile investment if you find yourself drawn to the Oxherding pictures. So let's stop the recording now.